Hi there, Brad Moritz, Hays, Kansas. This is my case study video blog using Screencast-O-Matic. I've got my slides from Google. I guess this is Google Drive slides. I kept them kind of plain and generic, and I just kind of formatted them in the outline of our rubric. So it's going to look pretty boring as far as that goes, but we'll see how it goes. So let's go to presentation. Now this case study involves a teacher who had some slanderous things put out on the internet on a web page against her, and there are several things to consider in this case. And so I'll kind of outline some of those things as I go along. Several different issues going along. This is my best take on how this should all play out if I were the administrator in the areas that I think should have been handled differently. So here's some things very quickly. What I know. Well, Dr. Stephen Forbes, he's the principal of the high school. He's been there for 9 years. He won recently a Principal of the Year by the state for being one of the most prestigious schools in the state. And he's very reputable and well liked in the community just because of his status and what he's done for the high school. The teacher that was slandered, teacher in question, her name is Miss Cindy Walker. She is highly qualified as evidenced by the fact that the principal only hires experienced or highly qualified individuals, and that's all in the blue here. Those are my supporting facts are in blue. She has her master's, so she's very knowledgeable in the subject matter that she's was hired to teach. She's a little older because she's already gotten her master's and 1 year post-grad, but she was only a second-year teacher, so she's relatively new. And she has a very high work ethic. She's very diligent in the things that she teaches in her classroom, and as evidenced by the students with their high level of stress, because grades are very important to them. She was not very liked by her students. So there are three things about Mrs. Walker, some facts about her. Other things that we know about Mrs. Walker is that she had been receiving some phone calls from some disgruntled parents because of the strict and diligent classwork and her ineffectiveness to teach the subject that she was teaching. And we know that because of she had a couple conferences with Mr. Forbes, the principal, to change some of her teaching strategies because she had some poor instruction. Students weren't learning what they need to be learning, and they were very stressed out. And she had a very rigorous class schedule, and was very diligent and didn't slack up on a whole lot of things. I'm guessing because she was probably a second-year teacher, and academic is the way she kind of rolled. And she did not have a very nice rapport with students. So that's what we know about Mrs. Walker. Thirdly, some facts, things that we know. Students, they come from very affluent families. They're very privileged in the fact that they come from affluent families. Grades are important to them because of it says that in our reading that they compete and try to be the valedictorian and stuff, and so high level of stress there, which doesn't make her class any more likable. And then they also are very competent in social networking skills, as evidenced in my blue text here, that they come from very privileged homes and they've got the latest in technology, and so they're very knowledgeable on how social networking works, and very competent in that any of them could have probably posted the comments about Mrs. Walker as any time. So, and then fourthly, we got to take a look at the parents, because I think this is where some of the problem steps in, especially with Mr. Forbes, the principal. Parents, they love providing for their kids, as evidenced by giving them the best of everything: clothes, technology, all of these things. They're affluent. In our reading, it says they're doctors, lawyers, partners in law firms, and so they've got a lot of money, which in this particular case, I think, was the downfall of Mr. Forbes, the principal. They got money for lawyers, all right, and so that's going to play a part in, I think, what some of the modifications need to happen in this scenario. And also, they think highly of their reputation and appearance. It's very important to them, as evidenced by their manicured lawns and stately homes, and the fact that they chose that neighborhood and send them to Roosevelt High School because of its reputation as well. And so a lot of factors here at play. Here's some more case facts. We know that Mrs. Walker was sent an email that referred her to a web page. We don't know who the email came from. She went to the web page. We don't know who the author was of that web page, but it had some suggestive personal comments and some complaints about her rigorous class, and a threatening comment that was quotable. Who wants to see? Oops, who wants to D? Oops, sorry, mistake there. Sorry, Dr. Booty, one typo. Who wants to D Mrs. Walker disappear? Who wants to see Mrs. Walker disappear? And that, of course, was an unknown author as well. So those are some more facts. Those are civilly, that's the big issue at hand. But there's other issues going on. Case facts. Mrs. Walker believes that Randy Franks is the one responsible, as evidenced in the text as her believing that this is true because of his behavior in class and his computer knowledge. Doesn't mean he's guilty. That's not one of the facts, but the fact is that she believes that he's the one. Mrs. Walker also believes that her life is in jeopardy, as evidenced by the fact that she does not feel safe in her apartment and ends up staying at her parents' house just because she doesn't feel safe. Mr. Forbes, fact, sincerely believes that it's a prank, and therein lies the problem for Mr. Forbes. And we'll get to that here in a moment. Also some facts. Mrs. Walker, the teacher, she was believing that she should call the police and even asked, should I call the police? But she did not, as we know, because Mr. Forbes advises her to not call the police. He does do one thing right, though, early on in making her feel better about the case, that he's going to handle it, is that he makes copies of the email and makes copies of the web page just in case those happen to disappear or get taken off the internet. At least he has copies of those that they can use for later for evidence. So he does that right. But he does not have her call the police, which is, I think, part of the problem. Again, so some case facts. He does not, Mr. Forbes does not call the police because he believes it's a prank. That's mistake number one for Mr. Forbes. Strike one. Mr. Forbes also does not protect the rights of Mrs. Walker because he intends to enlist the help of the district technologist, which at that point, then that's probably a good plan to technically to involve somebody who knows a little bit about technology, but that certainly does not protect her rights to not have this out to anybody else. And then he also makes the mistake, I believe, by saying, is there a student who is unhappy with you? I believe that that's a mistake on his part, because that suggests that she has done something to bring this on herself. Like she has created this inevitable situation that she should have done something to avoid this this slanderous deal on the internet. So I believe he did not have her back in that case, and we'll talk about that later too when we start talking about the resolutions. What do I need to know? I need to know if Randy Franks, I suppose, has a prior record, if we're going to talk about the actual civil offense here, or who else could be responsible for this. You know, we start deciding. There's several students that were responsible, and in a web page like that, several people could have made comments, but somebody obviously created the page. who authored the email to give Mrs. Walker the heads up, and who created the web page in question. So those are some things that we need to know as far as the case is concerned. The offense on the internet, the threat to Mrs. Walker's life. Those are some things we need to know. This is obviously going to be something that has to happen. Identify the problem, but I think there are several problems here in this particular case. Someone has created a web page that we've got to find out who was responsible for that, who slandered the teacher and possibly threatened her life, her well-being. And there's the other question of why did Mr. Forbes not call the police? Okay, he didn't call the police. Why not? And I believe that is the underlying problem, because I think this is an administration issue that could have been resolved long time before if Mr. Forbes would have handled his job and been a little more professional in this all along. So there are several plans and strategies to address here. One, I would get the police involved, turn everything over to the police, and if necessary, arrange a meeting with Randy, the troublemaker Franks, and his parents. Just kidding, he's not really a troublemaker yet. Kids will be kids, but somebody did the thing, and so we're gonna have to maybe call Randy's parents in, not as a accusation, but as a information gathering meeting. Police would probably be involved, and at that point the police may just take over and we may not have to do anything else. They may do it all. And then if necessary, assist in finding the author of the email, the web page, however we can, through computer coding or turning over district files or whatever, student computers or whatever happens. So that's certainly one plan that needs to be implemented, and those are some strategies to take care of that. Another plan we need to address is the student needs. Obviously, there were some disgruntled students. There's some things that they need to be reviewed on. For example, the acceptable use policy regarding computer use. And this can be handled, I think, through an assembly as a large body, go over the rules, regulations, expectations again, or individually in student or teacher classrooms during a teacher advisory class or homeroom or seminar or something like that. When teachers have students' attention, they can go over the expectations. Review the appropriate conduct in academic and social settings. I mean, it's not wrong to just kind of get together with teachers and students and go, you know what, that's inappropriate. You guys are being mean. Quit teasing Mrs. Walker, kind of thing. You know what I mean? There's a time and a place, and this is not real nice. And it could be a bullying thing too, so they could address all kinds of issues at that point. And then remind them that the school is safe, should be a safe place for everybody, teachers and students included, and that their safety is a primary concern, and that really things like this shouldn't happen because it interferes with the academic process. Another thing that needs to happen, another plan with some strategies, is that Mrs. Walker needs to become a more effective teacher. And I believe after apologizing to Mrs. Walker, Mr. Forbes needs to make weekly contacts with her to make sure she's doing okay and check on how she's doing, at least weekly, maybe even more at the beginning. They need to assign her a mentor teacher that can help her through some of those things that she needs to deal with. And not be so stressed out herself, maybe lighten up. And so a mentor teacher could certainly help her, guide her specifically in those areas, and then develop some specific teaching strategies that she can implement in her classroom to eliminate some of those student issues that she's got, so that she's not so hated. So in looking at those things that we need to address, we need to promote the success of all students. So while promoting the success of all students and answering the question, what's best for students, you got to kind of look at the issues involved here. Okay, so one, we've got disrespectful students, not treating a teacher nice. We've got an ineffective teacher that needs to be better, and we've got an administrator that I think was letting his reputation and the reputation of the school keep him from making the right decision. in calling the police to begin with. So those are three issues that we need to deal with. We'll deal with those one at a time.